What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk a little bit about The Witcher 4 and CD Projekt Red. And this comes from Eurogamer, and it seems like they kind of had this in store for the whole year because they've talked to some of the heads of CD Projekt Red and just some of the individuals even there as well, and kind of came up with a whole editorial on it. Thought it was actually pretty good. I'm going to go over the condensed version from Okami Games on Twitter, but I do want to kind of bring into the context of the entire article because there's a little bit more there, but generally sounds very optimistic. They honestly sound smarter and more calculated. Yet again, I mean, because I can see kind of both ways of looking at it, where people would say, okay, well, like, of course they're going to say these things, and then, you know, certain things might happen, and they would just be liars. And, you know, these things do happen. Like when a Cyberpunk 2077 launches and it's a complete disaster, they probably sounded smarter and more prepared in articles leading up to the release over the summer, but little did you know all the shenanigans that were actually playing out. So there could definitely be some deceptiveness there, but if you just take it at face value, it does sound like they've learned. It sounds like they put kind of more checks and balances in the company, which I think is pretty interesting to read over. But let's go over the condensed version again from Okami. So he says, next game, Witcher 4, will be bigger and better than The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077. Witcher 4 will likely release 1 to 2 years after the full reveal. Lessons learned from Cyberpunk: there's no magic, there's only hard work and making sure you stay on the right course. Better studio organization to avoid another buggy launch, including better review processes and more time in pre-production. Cyberpunk's launch wasn't the reason for the switch to Unreal Engine 5. They wanted to share tech between multiple projects simultaneously. PC first release not in the cards at the moment. Will launch on console at the same time. Okay, so to break it down a little bit more, especially those first couple bullet points I think aren't fully in context, so I kind of want to go over those, but you know, kind of starting at the bottom and going up, because those actually are more in context. So the PC thing specifically in the article is actually a little weird, because the answer initially, the first word was maybe, like maybe we'll do a PC version first, but then he kind of backtracks and says no, absolutely we're not doing it. So it was a little weird actually, the whole wording, but basically the question was posed, hey, I mean, you saw Baldur's Gate, right? Baldur's Gate got it out on PC first, and it worked, right? Like it was successful, and it allowed time for the console versions to kind of like get done, right? And basically, you know, would you be interested, you know, in doing that? And again, like the first word was maybe, but the end result was no. Like they are not gonna do PC only. They know that is a strategy. They did say if there was, say, a scenario where there was 20 consoles or 20 devices that a game can come out on, would they release it on all 20 at the same time? And the answer is no. But they want to pick like the main ones. Now, I mean, I kind of didn't want to get too crazy in terms of my own speculation. I wonder if that's almost a sign of like the Series S or something, or even like a Switch version. You know, Xbox, because of maybe like the contractual thing where you got to release it on both the Series consoles. I'm not sure, but I found that line of just the line, I guess the words that he said, kind of interesting, where it was like, okay, so you're not saying that you wouldn't like kind of pick favorites, you're just saying you're not going to do PC only. So he does say, you know, it would be on PC and consoles. They did say, like, you know, in terms of the mock reviews that they have done, they do those on consoles. When they talked about some of the checks and balances and making sure things were running well, they mentioned consoles. So they're definitely this is not like they're just going to PC only. Okay, that's one part of it. Going up one, Cyberpunk's launch wasn't the reason for the switch to Unreal Engine 5. That was pretty interesting part kind of towards the beginning, talking about technology and kind of like how they've grown, and that's pretty much in context. That's pretty much what he said. Basically, you know, if they were working on one game, kind of genre defining, generation defining, you know, the engine they had was fine. But when they wanted to do more than one thing at a time, to be able to create something and then share it to the other team that's working on something else was very, very difficult on their old stuff. On the new stuff on Unreal Engine, it's much easier. And you know, the studio has like quadrupled in size. I think it was 300 or so people with The Witcher 3, so 9.5 years ago. 350, now it's like 1,400. That third from the bottom bullet point of the better organization and just being able to stop things at certain parts and the pre-production stuff, I mean, not too much more. to kind of say than that kind of goes into my theme, that I was saying at the very beginning of this video, a little bit smarter, right? A little bit better prepared, a little bit more calculated. Like I personally, I won't tell you what to believe. I want to believe that, right? I want to believe that they've really learned, and not just, I mean, it's easy to say you've learned, right? It's easy to say, oh yeah, Cyberpunk was a disaster at launch. It's another thing to rebound, and they did. It's another thing to do the DLC and to really fix so much of it and really leave Cyberpunk on a good impression. They did that too. And then it's another good thing to install systems in place so that never happens again. And that is the key, my friends. And that's something I've been saying for a long time. I want a good redemption story. I like redemption stories. They're not complete, though, until the next thing. And in my opinion, specifically, just mine, CD Projekt Red is not fully out of it until their next game. Their next big, not DLC, their next huge, multi 10 million plus selling game. That is their that is when you can finally say, okay, the rebound has been completed. The underdog story, once was elite, then they fell down, and they kind of, clawed, fought back from the dead. That story ends when The Witcher 4, or I guess that saga, right, the chapter of the plot ends once the next game comes out, because that's the full proof that you've done it. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of at least where I'm coming at it from, is like, you can say all you want, and you did to a good degree rebound on all this stuff from the past, but you can't, you don't want to keep falling in the same thing. You don't, another thing about a redemption story is you don't want it to happen like more than once, right? I mean, like from a studio. So if a studio has a redemption story, that means at one point it needed to be redeemed, right? And I think I've said this before, like with a Battlefront 2 situation. I like it when games redeem themselves, No Man's Sky, things like that. But if you have multiple games in a row that are redemption stories, yeah, they're cool, I guess, to say, oh yeah, look at the top 10 games that are redemption stories. But doesn't that mean they all failed? You know what I mean? And if they happen multiple times from the same studio, you're telling me that Cyberpunk and The Witcher 4 both failed at launch, and it took them redemption stories to fix it? Yeah, it's cool you fixed yourself, but like, it shouldn't have happened. Shouldn't have happened once. Definitely shouldn't happen 2 times in a row, right? So that's always kind of been my mentality, where it's like, just make sure it never happens again. So the final bullet points, when he talks about The Witcher 4 will be bigger and better than The Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077. So let me read the actual paragraph, because I do think that's kind of missing some stuff. Again, I will not say it's easy, but I think that we have some cool stuff going, and hopefully that we'll have some good showcase of the technology. The only thing I will say is that changing the tech for us does not change the fact that we'll always be ambitious. And the next game we do will not be smaller, and it will not be worse. So it will be better, bigger, greater than The Witcher 3. It will be better than Cyberpunk, because for us, it's unacceptable to launch that way. We don't want to go back. Now, those are kind of 2 different points, and one point I kind of agree with. The other point I'd be a little bit more kind of cautious of. Again, I mean, it really goes into everything I just spent the last couple minutes talking about, right? You cannot do that again. He just said it. I believe him. I believe that that's the thing. Now, the whole bigger and better and things, they won't go smaller. They can only go bigger. As I always say, bigger does not mean better. And that's not like doubting what they're talking about, because you can have bigger games that are also good. It's just harder. And I always say this like over, I feel like a broken record, but it's important. As the world grows of like an open world game, right? You can have the biggest open world game on planet Earth if there's nothing to do in it. If it's all fluff, if there's not substance and quality in that open world, you made a game that's big just for the sake of it being big. It's about what's in that big world that matters, not about that the world is big in and of itself, right? So I would say that for any game. I have said that for any game. Heck, one of my favorite games this year in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, they went bigger and it was not better. The only issue, or one of the main issues at least I have with Rebirth, is the big factor of it. It's so repetitive. It has that open world bloat that's like a downfall of the entire genre, I would say, as a whole. It's in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and it really, I think, distracts at times from the amazing game that's actually there. That's just one example. But so, with The Witcher 4, look, The Witcher 3 is, and I haven't played Cyberpunk enough to really be able to speak on it, so maybe they did it again there. But with Witcher 3, it is a very well handcrafted big world, and it's got stuff everywhere. It's got secrets to I felt, it sound like I'm writing like the byline for it. It's got the secrets to explore. It's got the dungeons. It's got all the question marks, and they're all interesting. The side quests lead you on journeys, and everything feels purposeful. Okay, everything feels like it's actually there for a reason versus, well, let's just have 90 things to do just to have those 90 things to do. And most times that's the case. Now, they're a little bit different because they kind of know, okay, we need to go quantity, but there also needs to be quality with the quantity. Okay. But as for the Cyberpunk, like, in terms of like that bullet point, not exactly, completely accurate because part of it, is talking just literally about not repeating the mistake, right? Better in the sense that we need to be better than the launch of our last game, right? But bigger than, bigger in terms of like size and scope and stuff than what they've done in the past. And then finally, that final bullet point that I guess I didn't get to yet in terms of The Witcher 4 will release potentially, 1 to 2 years after the full reveal. So the whole story there, they talked about when Cyberpunk was announced that they wanted to release that 1 year after the game was announced. So they kind of had 1 year of marketing, heavy, like, specific marketing for that game, and it ended up being 2 years, and they weren't ready for that. And they basically talk again about learning from that. And when they did the DLC to Cyberpunk, they had 6 months. They were ready for that. They knew when they were going to announce it. They knew when it was going to release, and they had, the marketing materials in place. So what they want to do for this next game is basically do the same thing, have a very specific like announcement day and know the release date. I'm liking more and more companies saying that, by the way. The more companies that say, hey, when we announce the game fully and we're ready to freaking go, we do pre-orders, all that stuff, we want the release date. We don't want, okay, well, 3 years from now, the game's going to release. No more of that stuff. Now, what they did say, though, okay, the difference between the full context and the partial, they did say that they do anticipate kind of releasing breadcrumb trails, like theory type situations where they'll drop something maybe about a theme or about a character or something about The Witcher 4. They can do that before the announcement. So like when they fully reveal the game and they say, okay, it's coming out 9.5 months from now, pre-orders are going to be available next month. When they do that, months before then, they might have already actually told us things, and it could be through video, it could be through pictures, it could be through tweets, but it's going to be more about theory crafting than it is about like dumping information on us, right? So the first stage is kind of giving us some stuff just to speculate, just to get people really like me, other YouTubers, journalists, people the ability to talk, right, and get things going about the game. Then when they fully show it, they really do want it to be released within a year after they do that. Again, as they talked about with Cyberpunk, at least they weren't prepared. I mean, maybe you can prepare a year and a half worth of materials, but as we've seen from like across the industry, it's shrinking. It really is. Like Sony's doing it. A lot of teams are doing it now where you don't have 2 years of promotional materials to just like flood the internet every week on. You may have like 6-9 months, but you don't have 2 years. So you gotta be able to pick your time of when you're going to announce it and when it's releasing, and it can't be too far apart. So there you go. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure as always you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.